if you think of yourself badly or you have low self-esteem as I did, the world of validation will never fill that hole.
This is Hard Parking, brought to you by Right Honda and Right Toyota out of Scottsdale, Arizona. I'm your host, Jhae Pfenning, recording from my home studio in Gilbert, Arizona. Coming up on today's show, I had the absolute pleasure of talking with Kaila Yu. Kaila has a book coming out called Fetishized, which you may or may not have seen on social media if you were following her. If this is your first time hearing about it, perfect. If you're watching this on Monday, the book comes out tomorrow. If you're watching this on Tuesday, the book literally came out today. And if you're watching this past Tuesday, the book is already out there. So get out there and get it. You can get it at Barnes & Nobles. You can get it probably anywhere you would normally get books, including her website, kailayu.com. You're going to learn about that coming up in a few moments. I will say that in doing this conversation with her, it wasn't until about halfway through the conversation where it finally hit me, oh my God, I'm talking to Kaila Yu. And so after this conversation with Kaila Yu, you're going to want to stick around with the show because I'll give you my opinion, things that had dawned on me as I was editing the episode, as well as some other thoughts on the fetishization of Asian women and the culture. All that and more coming up after this word from Arcus Foundry. So quick story for you. A listener lost a big job, missed the call, never saw the DM, probably because he was listening to this podcast. It happens, and it's fixable. Running a business shouldn't mean juggling a dozen apps and missing opportunities. SparkForge helps you reply faster, capture more leads, and get more reviews, all without adding hours to your day. One simple place to handle calls, texts, and social messages so you can focus on the work that pays. It's like finally putting your business on cruise control without losing the steering wheel. One login, one platform, all under your control. Consolidate your tech in one place to save time, money, and headache. The future is here, and it's powered by SparkForge AI from our friends at Arcus Foundry. Jump into a 30-day trial today by using code HARDPARKED at getsparkforge.ai and stop letting yesterday's tech eat tomorrow's profits. Kaila Yu, first off, thank you so much for being part of Hard Parking. I know you've been around, you've done a lot of things, and we're going to cover as much as we can today. So first off, thank you so much for making time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So you have a book coming out.
Yeah.
Fetishized. And this isn't your first rodeo. And so I also saw that you kind of co-authored another book with travel. And so you've been doing a lot of things. So first off, for my listeners and the viewers of this watching on YouTube and Spotify, tell us a little bit about yourself.
My name's Kaila Yu. I am a former import model, so that's my connection to the car automotive scene. I spent probably about 10 years touring the world with Hot Import Nights and others. And then I pivoted to a music career and then later a writing career, most recently, I guess.
So you've done a lot of things. There's a lot to kind of go back and double click in there. How did you get, and I don't want to spill too much from the book because that's the reason why there's a book so people can kind of dig in a little bit more, but going back to the beginning, what inspired you to do the hot import modeling?
That was purely accidental. It was just a timing thing. I mean, growing up when I lived in Upland, California, and we only had a tiny Asian population, say 3% or something at the school. And we still took over a parking lot, a small parking lot, mind you, but with the fixed up cars, all the Asians had their lowered, not even MR2s or cool cars. They were lowering Camrys or something, whatever parents' car they had. So I was very, anyone who was Asian American growing up during that time in the early 2000s, late 90s was around the car culture. But I ended up pursuing pinup modeling because my idol, Sung-hee Lee, was a Korean Playboy pinup model, but I looked up to her. So I ended up going that Playboy route. And then when I was featured on her website, then the Asian community came to know me. And then the car show companies just started reaching out.
Yeah. So going back a little bit, it's always a weird way how people kind of get into those things. It's like, hey, will you show up and do a photo shoot with us? We need someone. And then you kind of end up getting into there. You said you looked up to the model. What was it about her career or what you saw that it's like, hey, that's really cool. I want to be a part of that one day?
I mean, frankly, there were no Asian American role models there. I can't even name who Lucy Liu wasn't out yet,
Right.
so I don't even know who I could name. Like she was just the only one. Like, and she did happen to be really beautiful. But I write about this in my book. Like if I had other role models at the time, I maybe wouldn't have chosen a Playboy model if I had 50 other, singers or dancers or fashion girls like people have today to choose from.
Well, to be fair, in your defense, and I think most people's defense, they don't go after girls that don't look good. And so, that's something to look out for
Yeah.
sure. Kind of rolling into that, what are some of I think you've been out of the car scene for a while. Were you ever, like real talk, really into the cars at all, or just kind of the cool opportunities and possibilities of where you could go with that? Or did you
I mean, I
maybe not know at the
definitely
time?
I make a joke that a lot of models know nothing about cars, and I don't know anything about like the modifications or anything, but I do know growing up it was like, "Oh yeah, I want to date that guy with the dropped this and that." So it was definitely like I was into the aesthetic, but I'm by no means like a car expert. I'm like maybe a expert at the culture since I was so immersed in it. But yeah, I can't tell you like what exhaust or whatever.
Right.
Like yeah.
Which is fair because I think that just by saying, wow, I really like the guy who drives the drop top, whatever, that speaks to like every car guy's dream is to number one, have a cool car, be on the cover of a magazine, a lot of car guys, and attract the girl that appreciates the car. And it doesn't have to be a Ferrari or Lamborghini. There's nothing cooler than if a guy's driving his Subaru and a girl's like, hey, I love your ride. They're like, oh, that just
Mm.
made their week.
Yeah,
So you feel that
definitely.
you don't have to know much about the cars. You just have to know what you like.
Definitely.
And so parlaying from that, why did you stop that? Because what I will say is I haven't gone to car shows like that in a long time myself. I went to, Hot Import Nights, AutoCon, Spocom, the big California shows. You see the girls and there's more to them, many of them, than what the average car nerd thinks. And a lot of times it's kind of a stepping stone for better things. So you're doing the travel blog. I've known others that have taken that opportunity and, done books and done other big things because of that. How hard was it, do you think? How hard was it for you and how hard do you think it is for others to see themselves beyond just being the really good looking girl that might be in the autograph section or posing next to a car?
I think every girl who has some success in the industry is immediately looking on to what they can do next because you will be aged out of the industry. There's always a younger model on her way up. So there's that. And also for me, I left at a time where, and a car show people will say like Hot Import Nights isn't what it used to be. Um, and that was partially because Fast and Furious so mainstreamed the industry. The car shows back then were like a place for Asian Americans to find community and culture because we had no other places to unite. So when it became more diversified, which was in a way great for the industry, it also didn't it wasn't our meeting place anymore. So I think it changed a lot that way.
Yeah, I remember because we're going to touch on that because you had a cameo and was it Too Fast, Too Furious or Tokyo Drift?
Tokyo Drift.
Tokyo Drift. Okay, so by then essentially the third movie in the franchise. I remember when the first one came out, everyone's just, wow, this is the coolest thing ever. I had a modified import at the time, and one of the big questions I used to get is, hey, why do you have two radiators? It was like, well, it's an intercooler and it's a radiator, but the world wasn't ready for that. No one would ask that question today.
Yeah.
You know, at the time you were in it, like very much in the scene, what did you notice like slowly change within the 4 or 5 years that those three movies came out?
Yeah, I mean, when the first movie came out, everyone was very excited because there was murmurings of this movie in development. And then a number of people from the import scene were um, on the film kind of advising or whatever. And then after the movie came out, a lot of people were mad because I guess the cars didn't look authentically legitimate, or they were like too colorful and too overdone. And also, Asian Americans invented this scene. Like this movie franchise was inspired by an article called Racer X by Kenneth Lee for Vibe. And although it was about, like, I think a Puerto Rican racer in New York racing against the Asian, that scene was still co-opted from the Asian Americans probably in California. So the origins of all of that is Asian American, but like the only real speaking Asian in the movie was Rick Yoon for like 15 minutes, and he was a villain, and the Asian Americans are like kind of tired of being villains in our own story.
Yeah, you're right. All the main characters were not Asian, and the bad guys were the Asian.
Yeah.
Johnny Tran and those guys. But at the time, even with you in that transitioning, I mean, at that point, how many years were you into the modeling scene and maybe looking almost out?
That was a couple years in, and I don't think I was looking to leave when that first movie came out yet. I was just also pursuing other things while still touring around with the shows.
Yeah, and then to the root of like fetishized, and like I said, we're gonna get into that in a minute, but the fetish with Asian women, and especially in the culture, the car culture. Did you start as those movies gained popularity? Did you notice when you're going to these different events, being part of these events, the change there as well, or not really?
I will be honest that I feel like after the movies came out and the scene became more diversified, I feel like I became less popular. And that could have been a number of factors, as in I wasn't like the new model on the scene, or like Asians are my fans and not others. So I don't
Right.
know. But yes, I noticed is less interest in me after the movies, actually. Yeah. Until Tokyo Drift, that obviously renewed interest. But after the initial two movies, I noticed lost interest.
It's this weird psychological thing with I think people where the movies come out and they're not anti-Asian, but the entire cast is non-Asian. And then when you get to Tokyo Drift, where there's only like two of the main characters are actually not Asian, and,
But
and
they're
you
the
know,
main characters. Yeah.
yeah. But of that, did you see things starting to pick up more on the attention level specific to the people in the car scene? Because by then, people kind of knew you were anyway.
Yeah, I mean that movie really did. I ended up doing the cameo with my best friend Aiko Tanaka at the time. And then we would be booked everywhere as the Tokyo Drift girl. So that kind of just boosted another situation.
What was
But
that like, though? It's like, hey, it's no longer Kyla. It's the one of the Tokyo Drift girls.
well, it's crazy because I always say this, like I'm so honored that anyone would like be excited about that movie cameo. But what I write about in the book is like I said two words in the movie. I was on screen for 10, 15 seconds. And how desperate were we for representation that some people will be like, wow, that's a cool role. It's like so small, you know? But that was a big deal then when we had nothing.
Do you know who Jeremy Lin is?
Yeah.
It's the Jeremy Lin effect, I think, right? Where you see the representation of yourself on the big screen, popularity, everyone loves it. You just want to be a part of it and represent and show your support. So I think it's a little of the Jeremy Lin effect, but that was before Jeremy Lin.
Yeah, yeah. Things have come a long way since then. I'm like happy with the progress so far.
So let's get up to your book. The inspiration for Fetishized, because on your social media, it's fetishized, fetishized, it's coming soon, coming soon, coming soon. We're at a point where it's basically here. For the people who are watching this and listening, what's the hook for them?
Yeah, so, there's never everybody knows about the fetishization of Asian women. Like obviously all the Asians know about it. But even when I bring it up to white people, they're like, "Oh yeah, I know a guy," or my brother has that or whatever. But everyone like knows about it, but it's so niche and nobody's like written a first person book about it and like their experiences with perhaps playing into the fetish, which I did, and then like maybe the repercussions from that. So yeah, there's never been a topic on that. And I've talked about it amongst my girlfriends, but like I thought there should be something out there um speaking about it more in detail. And besides just a memoir about my life, it's also a cultural criticism. So it goes over the media that influenced me from the 2000s that, like, looking back was pretty toxic, like Memoirs of a Geisha. Um, yeah, like basically a child sex trafficking movie made into a romance. Um,
Wow.
the
Yeah.
Harajuku Girls, which we now recognize as problematic. There's problematic aspects to the Fast and Furious, Mean Girls, and I could go on and on.
It feels like you've seen that change, especially when you start dipping into the music industry. You know, you do the tour, lead singer, end up leaving that band. You know, what was that like? Because, and I know that's going back a little bit, but that's, you get to a level, you're chasing a dream, or maybe it wasn't that much of a dream to begin with. It was just something you loved doing. You get to tour, and then you just stop. What was there a switch? Were you just looking, staring at the ocean one day and said, you know what, it's time to shift gears when everything on the outside is going good, even on the inside it may not be?
Yeah, there's so many factors, but like in all of my youth, I felt so unseen. And I was just seeking so much validation, validation from men, validation from accomplishments, validation from like, okay, I was an import model. Let me show the world I'm more than just an import model. I can sing too. So then I started pursuing that and we started touring and I was like, I hate touring. Like it's not fun and it's so stressful and I did not enjoy it. But I loved being in a band. I loved being with my best friends on tour. That was so much fun traveling the world. But I'm a singer and I don't like performing. Like it makes no sense.
Do you still kind of work that muscle a little bit,
I sing
karaokeing and
in the
things like that?
shower. Yeah, karaoke, but I don't miss that one single bit. Like the day I quit, it took me a year. A friend was like, I think this makes you miserable. And I was like, no, I love being in a band. Like it was my entire identity. And then after I quit a year later, I didn't miss it one single day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
one of the things that were in the book is performing multiple hours in a row. Like, I don't know anybody who could do that.
A lot of people have to do that. Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. It's not fun. No.
We're talking what I think you said 4 or 5 hours at times.
Yeah, we ended up doing some residencies. So during things like that, where you're the main entertainment for the night, um, it is that much time.
You know what? I guess that makes sense as the residency. You're on at 10 after someone opens for you and you're closing the place down, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, I can see how that can get kind of tiresome really quick. And then
definitely.
traveling. I saw in your story, some of your clips that you used to do, and I don't know if you still do it, but how did you become kind of the travel correspondent for the local news?
Oh, that was very accidental. I think after I quit the band, my guitarist Kiki also quit the band eventually, like a year later. And we were like, oh, what do we do with our lives? Because we have no backup plan. So we just decided to turn our Nylon Pink blog, which had traffic, into travel blog because we had done so much traveling. So seemed like the natural segue. And we started blogging and pitching ourselves to TV networks and just trying to build a travel brand that way.
And you had some success with it, I think.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun with it and some success with it and got to travel to a lot of cool places together.
Before this book, what would you identify as kind of one of the more successful things in your life that you maybe a turning point to where maybe and you could still be seeking validation from childhood, but are you ever able to kind of sit back and be like, wow, I did that. That's really cool versus it's not enough.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's just even maybe first publishing an article for a legitimate outlet. I think the first one I wrote was like something about Denny's for Vice. And back then Vice was, really hot. I guess they're gone now. But that was super exciting. And
Yeah.
then secondly is getting sober. I think that's like really what changed the trajectory of my life.
Sober in the sense of alcohol, drugs,
Everything, yeah.
alcohol,
Drugs and
everything.
alcohol, yeah. 11 years on alcohol and everything else.
Was there an event, like a single event that's like, what the hell am I doing? Or just a culmination of events?
it was a culmination, but I was trying to like always wean back or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know if I didn't have the bright light moment that some people had, but it was maybe just like, this is time, you're getting older. It's not so cute anymore to be partying like this.
I mean, that's huge, and a lot of people can't take that step forward. So going back to the fetishization of the book itself, fetishized, but the fetishization of Asian women, at least modern times, when did you decide that it was time to write about this?
That was also very accidental. Um, so what happened was me and Kiki were doing the travel thing, and then the pandemic hit and all our trips were canceled.
Yeah.
So then we were like, I guess we finally have time to learn TikTok because we had all the time in the world. So we just spent like a year posting 5 videos a day each on like different channels. And we're just like, we called it throwing pizza at a wall, and you just see what sticks
Oh,
and you just
nice.
run with that.
Yeah.
And for me, when I started posting about the 2000s import scene, that's what really stuck. So I kept posting nostalgic Asian American content. And then I started to reflect back on like my modeling years where I say I fetishized myself and objectified myself. I started reflecting on that. And I was reflecting on that a little bit when the Atlanta spa shootings happened, where 8 people were shot and 6 of them were Asian women by a guy with sex addiction and possibly, you may assume, an Asian fetish, because he frequented these Asian massage parlors. Then I ended up writing an article for Newsweek because the next couple of days I was like conflicted over like, oh, how did I contribute to this? Because you don't necessarily, you think it's harmless and gross when a guy has an Asian fetish, but you don't necessarily think of violence. Because
Right.
I haven't experienced violence to the level of being shot to death. Yeah.
Right. How would you explain to those listening or watching when you said you kind of became a part of it and the fetishization of yourself, without too much detail for because the book's the book, but kind of take us through what that means.
Well, it's a couple of things because it was also taking place during the 2000s. And that was like an era when we were like, feminism was like, sexuality is empowering. Like, let's, be sexy and show ourselves. And like, Maxim and FHM were super popular. Playboy, everybody looked up to Hugh Hefner. And like, the Girls Next Door TV show was like, a family friendly show. Like basically this like super old guy with a harem being presented wholesomely. Like when you look back, it's like, what were we all just like acting like this is okay? So it was in this climate that I think a lot of women thought objectification was empowering. And I thought that too. And I thought like, growing up, you're like maybe getting ignored with your white girlfriends or whatever and like wishing you had blonde hair or blue eyes or whatever. Like boys didn't look at me then. Then when I noticed like, oh, well, now all of a sudden there's like all these men that are interested in Asian women, like that's good for me, right? That's what I thought back then.
It's almost like things come in waves, right? Things come in cycles. Because I know probably back in the 70s, it was a huge deal too because of the war and all the stuff in 60s and 70s. Going to go get me a nice Asian woman, give me a nice Vietnamese woman, beautiful black hair, pencil, cook for you, clean for you, don't age, Asian don't raisin, that's what we always say. And then maybe for a while it went away, and then it looks like we had a resurgence with the rise of the import car scene and just TV reality shows, right?
Yeah, I think it definitely contributed. And now I think there's another wave, a different wave with like K-pop and like anime being mainstreamed.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on like kind of looking and seeing that, or you'll see like the younger girls 18, 20, 23, and do you see yourself like that used to be me, or you're like, things are just so much crazier even now than it was then, or what are your thoughts when you process that?
Well, I think things are a lot better because like you have so many choices as role models. You know, there's fashion Asian Instagrammers or like fashion or cooking influencers, or there's Blackpink like on the world stage. And as a pop star, they're pretty wholesome compared to say Britney Spears back in the 2000s or something, you know? Um, so I think things have gotten better for sure.
In doing this book, it's got to be self-healing and self-therapeutic, right?
Yeah, I think it's one of the most healing things ever. And then just to like have people read it, especially women, and be able to relate. Um, I think I've been in my life really harsh on myself and especially during the 20s. So it's helped me like develop some compassion for many of the mistakes I made during that time.
What are some of the biggest things you look back at? Because everything we've done shapes who we are today, even the ones that we hate the most. Is there anything that you think that's happened in the past that you would change if it didn't change who you were today? Like if you could have learned that same lesson, but in a less painful way.
Oh, that one's so easy. I mean, in the book, I go into detail about it, but I suffered a very public sexual assault, which everyone thought that was my choice to participate in. And it has shaped me in so many amazing ways of making me stronger and like very uh impenetrable to online hate. But if I could not have gone through that, yeah, that would be absolutely preferred.
How is everything that you've gone through being an import model to being a musician to getting a spot in on TV in the Fast and one of the biggest, most successful franchises in movie history, whether people like them or not, you know, has it had much of an effect on your personal relationships, not just friendships, but maybe like romantic?
I don't know if my work has affected my romantic relationships. What's affected romantic relationships is my own um former low self-esteem issues before I got sober. And then now it's funny because I've spent so much time like becoming strong that I lack a little bit of vulnerability. So that's like what I'm actually trying to build on now. Like I need to be more vulnerable. And the book is very vulnerable, so that's a big
Absolutely.
step in the right direction, but still I'm very self-protective because I've been hurt before.
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't know if there's anything that's more vulnerable than a tell-all esque book about all the roller coasters that we have in our lives. What's one thing you hope that people get out of this book, whether it's the women reading it, the men that reads it? What do you want them to take away from it?
I want, especially women, just to not, I mean, we're built in a culture where we seek validation from men naturally. It's still this way in like media with the sexy girls on Instagram and OnlyFans. And that's fine. I think it's fine to be empowered in your sexuality if that's not the only thing you're hinging it all upon, as I did. Like that was my main validation. So if you can just like center your own gaze as the most important. And this goes for men too. Like men have expectations. Like is important is what you think of yourself, not everybody else. And if you think of yourself badly or you have low self-esteem as I did, the world of validation will never fill that hole. So you have to work on yourself first.
What are some things you would recommend for people to do once they put the book down?
Um I think reading is very helpful. Um, for women, a book that really inspired me in it is Feminist Chauvinist Pigs. It's about the 2000s and like the damaging media. But also, like for myself, I just do so much self-healing work. So if you're, and I think everybody could use this because everybody has some insecurity or something, but like finding some kind of spiritual practice, like I after getting sober got into meditation or like I found the passion of like free diving so the ocean's a very healing place for finding your happy healing place. So yeah, I'd like look into the healing practices.
Speaking of all your travels, because with your free diving, where's a place that you would go back to over and over and over again if you just snap your finger and be there, and then snap your
That's
finger and be
Bora
back?
Bora. Yeah, without
Bora
question.
Bora,
Bora
yeah.
Bora is just my favorite place in the world, and French Polynesia in general. Um, Not to hate on Hawaii, I love Hawaii, but like it's French Polynesia is just another level than Hawaii. It's like heads and shoulders above.
Sounds like I need to go to French Polynesia.
Yeah, definitely. Wait, you're not from Hawaii, are you?
No,
Okay.
no, no. I'm not. I'm actually. I'm a Blasian. So yeah.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
not. Yep. Yep.
To make
Yep.
sure I wasn't talking shit about
Oh no, this
your
show.
home
Yeah, you can
state.
say. No, yeah, you can say whatever you want. I mean, that's. I hope that people really get what they need from this book. I think it's very powerful that we're able to put this together. Anybody who writes a book, it's a huge accomplishment. I don't think it's something I could do, even if I had a co-writer or anything. I just don't think I could do it. But I think it's got to be a great way of self-healing and kind of putting that foot forward and looking toward the future. And hopefully that, in reading this, it does change kind of the outlook of people or just give them a different perspective that maybe they didn't think about. Because I think that's one of the things that trap people is it's not that you mean to be a certain way or another way. It's just you don't know any other way to be. It's almost like we don't know what we don't know. And some people aren't open enough to be receptive to learning about other people's travels and their plights. And when you do, you become, I think, a better person for it, and you have a better appreciation for other people.
Yeah, and Asian Americans like are the least vocal, I think, of all ethnicities. And I think we do keep a lot of secrets. Or like there's this word in Chinese called mianzi, and it's like saving face. So we maybe don't talk about the difficult things, and we should because it makes them more normalized, you know?
Why do you think that is? Is it just like a cultural pride thing?
I think it's definitely a cultural thing. And also in Asia, it's less about the individual, right? Like,
Yeah.
say China's communist. So, like, they're not like America's all about the individual. So it's just a totally flipped culture.
Social media is all over the place. Social media is blowing up. There's so many different types of social media. You came up, your rise in the world was really before mainstream social media was even a thing. I mean, maybe MySpace, but even that was Fast and Furious. I don't think we even had that when Fast and Furious originally came out.
I think it's right around then. Yeah.
Right around that time, yeah. And where are you with social media? Because that's one of the challenges that a lot of these kids today, a lot of people have that we didn't have growing up amongst the stuff that we did have.
I'm so glad I did not have Instagram growing up in high school. Like to imagine having to play this game of popularity on in public in such a public space. Um yeah, that goes back to validation, like the seeking outside validation. Um which I guess it's like even more built into our culture than before now that I reflect on social media. But I think it's important just like to talk to young nobody told me about these things when I was young or like about trying to have self-love or like nobody talked about that. So whether it be parents or like speaking to your younger brother and sister, just having these conversations about not basing your entire life on outside validation, I think would be helpful.
Yeah, it's a war zone out there, and I don't know if I could do it.
Yeah.
Because our teenage years are some of the most formidable years in our early teens, and yeah, some of the stuff, some of the choices that we make during that age, there's no way I would survive
Yeah. I
today's
mean,
social media.
you have to be careful now. The internet's forever.
Where can people find the book?
So it is coming out on August 19th and it will be available in all stores. So you could find it Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, whatever. And then you could find me, Kaila Yu, anywhere. That's the name of my website, my social media, etc.
Will there be an audiobook?
There is. Yeah, I just recorded that this week and it was exhausting. But yes, it is done.
Awesome. Kaila Yu, thank you so much for joining Hard Parking.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Kyla. So as promised, I told you I'd give you kind of my thoughts about the Kaila Yu interview conversation that we just had. I usually don't do these closings anymore. I usually just drop in my pre-recorded closing roller. But as I was kind of going through and making those edits, there's a lot to unpack that you just don't really unpack in real time and having these conversations. I did say that I came to a realization halfway through the conversation that I was talking to Kaila Yu. And obviously I knew who I was talking to because we did the interview for the book. But everything just kind of dropped on me when I was researching and finding photos to back up everything she was talking about. Not really to back it up, but for those of you who watch the video, you notice that I do try to find things that I could drop in, some video overlays, some visual overlays, things that just kind of help tell the story visually as you were listening to it. And man, when I think back to those times, I was 23 years old in 1999. Again, I am half Asian. People don't realize that, but I've taken those DNA tests, and I'm actually more Asian than I am anything else. And so when I think about, the Sung Hee Lee and the Kaila Yus of the world, Francine D, hell, in the early 2000s, I used to watch a show called Andromeda, which was kind of a cool space show. You may or may not have seen it, but Lexa Doig was on there, and she's Canadian, but her mom is Filipino. And for me, and maybe it's different because I didn't gravitate to Asian women because I saw it necessarily on Fast and Furious and it just became the in thing. But I think a part of that might just be not necessarily genetically predisposed, but just work with me on this. In society, we kind of look at things two different ways, right? And we tend to follow what's popular, which is, to her point, the over fetishization of anything. And in her case, she saw the model and she wanted to be like that model and kind of went down that path, which opened up a lot of doors for her moving forward. And, through all the negatives that happened to her through her life, that's where she is today. And she was able to write this amazing book. I got a PDF copy of it, and it's incredibly vulnerable to talk about those things and open yourself up. So best wishes for anything and everything positive that happens with Kaila in the future. This book was her tell-all, which her truths, her way of facing her demons. And, a lot of the stuff that she talked about, it's wild for us to think about if you're not going through it, but it's just kind of one of those deals where most people can't do what she did. And that is come out and talk about things like that later in a positive light and move forward and keep doing things in life. Because everything she's done, whether it's all the journalism, sure, she had a couple spots in a movie, which is great. She was able to be a lead singer in a band and toured, which is great. And I hope she just continues to stack up the wins. But, kind of going back to me and my thought about that is, when you can't have it both ways, and this has nothing to do with her, but this is just society in general. Fast and Furious is true. Depending on where you're from in the United States and you're raised up during those times in the mid to late 90s and the early 2000s, Fast and Furious, just like the game Gran Turismo, put a lot of this culture and stuff on the map in front of everybody. It laid it out right in front of you. Tupac, I just thought about this as I'm talking right now. So Tupac made this song, They Don't Give a Fuck About Us. And in the lyrics, when I used to ride, thug until the day I die, nobody gives a fuck about us. But when I start to rise, a hero in their children's eyes, now they give a fuck about us. So if you process what that really means, it's when we're out doing what we're doing and no one's paying attention to us, they just kind of scoff at us. Once we become the popular thing, the in thing, the thing that their kids want to be like, and they are just responsible adults. It's not white, black. It's just the people in general that may have looked down at that. Now you care. And so I think that's where she's coming from also with the fetishization. And I think there's a lot of merit in that. But we tell people, you can be anything you want, but you can't deny the fact that if it becomes popular, it just becomes a thing everybody wants. Hopefully by me saying that, it makes sense. And let me give you another example. We're going to make this a black and white thing just right now, okay? We need more black police officers, and we need to send them into the black communities that are struggling. Why? Well, because one hand of that gets offended because it's like, well, you need to trick us. You're trying to trick us by sending somebody who looks like us here. F you. They're the worst ones ever. The other side of that is those kids look up and they see someone who looks like them that they can aspire to be like. And when you take the racialization of that away, it makes all the sense in the world. You look up to people. Kaila Yu looked up to someone because she saw them like, wow, they look like me and they're having the success. How do I be like that? It's the Jeremy Lin effect, like I brought up earlier in our conversation. And I looked it up because I remember Linsanity. I don't remember all the details. I know he was an Asian dude who he basically torched the Miami Heat, and Linsanity was born. And so I looked this up. So this was between the 2011-2012 season. Jeremy Lin's jersey became the number one sold jersey in the NBA for a week. So for that week, he outsold Derrick Rose, LeBron James, Kobe Bryant because Linsanity. And I remember all my Asian friends, everybody on TV, everybody went out and bought a Linsanity jersey because one of us, that's the thing. One of us is there. One of us made it. We can be like that. And they would always show these huge sections of Asian fans all rocking the Jeremy Lin jersey. They were attending these games sometimes for the first time. It's like the Black Panther movie, the Marvel Black Panther movie. I had more African American friends that was their first and only Marvel movie because it was essentially an all black cast. People like people that look like them. Everybody wants to be a professional athlete. Everybody wants to be the next basketball player. Why? Because the best basketball players typically are African American and they look like you, so you can be that. So in one hand, you get kind of kicked down for that for that mentality of thinking. The other hand, it's like, well, we want more multiracial doctors and lawyers. So we need to teach that to the multiracial kids so they have someone to aspire to be like. But we live in a society where, in one hand, that's a problem to have that mindset. And in the other hand, it's a requirement to have that mindset because that's what people identify with. People see that and say, hey, I can be like that person. So is it fetishization? Maybe in some cases. I mean, because the stuff Kaila went through is pretty crazy. And I can't even imagine, what she had gone through just to get to this point. I mean, obviously it's in the book, but I think it's a lot more complicated at times than that. I mean, I brought it up in the conversation. The American man has been into Asian women since the war, going back to World War II, World War I, definitely the Korean War, the Vietnam War. Think about the very popular, it's really degrading when you really think about it, but the whole me love you long time, right? I mean, that's where all this crazy shit comes from. And by doing the whole me love you long time, very offensive, but that's also fetishization in its own point. So I think it's a lot more complicated. And, bless her for telling her truths. And I hope she has all the success with this book. And I hope that opens the minds of a lot of people to kind of realize, I don't think it's kind of overstepping. Anything you say and do is going to offend somebody. I don't think that's her point at all. That's how we get into this whole, and I'm going to say the three letters, the whole DEI thing. There's a pro and there's a con to all that stuff. But I think that she went down a path, and that's the path that she thought was the way to go. And she realized, while going through that path, there's other ways. One of the crazy things, though, when I was researching this and I was looking her up or finding these photos was like, I was thinking, wait a minute. I mean, I know who Kaila Yu is, but like I really remembered who she was, even more so than that, because as I saw the pictures of different magazine covers and just different things out there, and I started, pulling up pictures of other people around those times, I go, oh my God. Not only is she quietly kind of on the Mount Rushmore, especially in my culture of cars, of import models, but not even just import models, just a car culture. She's kind of up there in the Mount Rushmore of Asian women. And I am 100% sure after I finished the conversation and started editing, I used to follow her on Instagram. I used to follow a lot of people, a lot of models on Instagram, because I was going to all the car shows and I was part of it. I was competing. And, there's always those tables. Shout out to the Kuyas for always providing protection to these shows. They have tables of girls and they have to provide protection to them while people lined up all across the entire thing. You had hundreds of people line up, guys and girls line up to get an autograph from these models. So she was on top of the world, not just from a car show standpoint, but think about doing that tour for like the Fast and Furious tour. Like she was on top of the world. And that's stuff that kind of hit me, not only as I was doing the conversation with her, I was like, oh, Kaila Yu, oh, I know she is, but oh shit, she was like on top of the world and she's on my podcast. How cool is that? But at some point I decided on social media to go through and pretty much unfollow all these beautiful models that I didn't personally know. You know, the only ones that I still follow are girls that I know, that I've met, but just because of being on the car scene, no other reason. But yeah, I mean, she's legendary. And if you're watching this is your first introduction to Kaila Yu. If you're listening to this is your first introduction to Kaila Yu. She's legendary. And maybe I could have done a better job in that conversation helping to highlight that. I didn't. You know, I hit her with I try to think of some of the deeper responses to some of the questions she was asking because, you know, this podcast, we try to dig that stuff out of people so that they're not answering the same questions or in the same way they answer everywhere. Because she's doing a book tour. She's got to be answering most of these questions. And so, you know, hopefully I hit her with some stuff that kind of made her think a little deeper. It was awesome having her on the show. And, you know, again, if you want to check it out, KailaYu.com. You can order the book there. You can get it at Barnes & Nobles. You can get it probably anywhere at this point. But just make sure you're following her on Instagram, Kaila Yu. And, you know, that's pretty much all I have to say about that conversation. I said a lot of stuff there. I kind of rambled a little bit. But, you know, none of this was, I guess, I didn't write an outline down of my thoughts of the Kaila Yu interview. I just knew I had some. And so I wanted to share those with you. Hey guys, thanks for checking out the show. If you like what you heard, or even if you didn't like what you heard, if you're watching this on YouTube, go ahead and hit that thumbs up, hit the subscribe button. If you're listening to it on traditional podcast media, go ahead and go over to YouTube and hit that like button and please subscribe. I'm trying to move everything to YouTube. It's been a lot of good time trying to make these videos. But anyway, so with that being said, I do want to thank the show's sponsors, Right Honda, Right Toyota, Toyota of Huntington Beach, I got to read this, Claremont Toyota, and Gardenia Honda. Can't forget ArcusFoundry.com. And, of course, AutoCannon, officially licensed Honda and Acura gear. I want to thank our Patreon business supporters, Kuya Automotive out of Winter Garden, Florida, Automotive Specialty Tool out of Owings Mills, Maryland, The Lucky Brakes, Sports Breakers out of Caledonia, Michigan, Big House Small Home Design out of Ashburn, Virginia, and Traverse City, Michigan, and The Shade Bros out of Boise, Idaho. If you're in a position to help the podcast upgrade, feel free to either become a member on YouTube, so you can get episodes early when they're ready early, which isn't very often, or you can join the Patreon for as little as $3 a month. You get access to bonus audio, bonus video, and exclusive swag, as well as all the normal swag that comes out without having to pay for it. Special shout out to Mark Stoneman, Catherine Cox, Eddie Ramos, Richard Graves, Byron Jones, Bo Jung, Alex Comita, Andrew Bunkley, and Dre Mullins for supporting the show. If you want to email the show, info@hardparking.com. Follow me on Instagram @Pfenning. Follow the show @hardparkingpod. I already told you to subscribe via YouTube, and I meant it.
Shut up!